Isabel had always been the responsible one in the family. At 37, she worked as a senior marketing director at a tech company. It was a good job with good pay, but she had worked incredibly hard to get there, unlike her younger siblings who seemed to float through life expecting handouts. When her parents called, asking her to come over for a family dinner, Isabel didn't think much of it. They had bought their house about 10 years ago with a mortgage they were still paying off. It was a nice place in the suburbs, nothing fancy, but comfortable. Isabel lived in her own apartment downtown. It was small, but it was hers, and she'd been saving for years to buy an actual house someday. She pulled into her parents' driveway behind her brother Miguel's beat-up Honda. Her sister Jasmine's Mazda was there too. Great, the whole gang was assembled. She grabbed the bottle of wine she brought and headed inside. "Isabel, you made it." Mom greeted her with a hug that felt a little too tight. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Everything okay, Mom?" Isabel asked, handing her the wine. "Oh, we'll talk at dinner. Your father's in the living room with your brother and sister." Isabel found Dad sitting in his recliner, looking like he'd aged 10 years since she last saw him. Miguel and Jasmine were on the couch, both absorbed in their phones. "Hey, Dad," she leaned down to kiss his cheek. "How's it going?" "Been better," he said with a weak smile, "but we'll get to that." "What's wrong? Are you sick?" A ball of worry formed in Isabel's stomach. No, nothing like that. We'll discuss it over dinner." Isabel turned to her siblings. "Hey, guys." Miguel glanced up from his phone. "Hey, sis." At 28, her brother still acted like a teenager. He worked sporadically as a bartender, but spent most of his time partying and dating a series of interchangeable girlfriends. Jasmine, 30, gave Isabel a quick smile before returning to her Instagram scrolling. "Nice outfit." "Target." She always had a way of making compliments sound like insults. She worked at a salon, but was constantly taking courses and switching career paths, never settling on anything. Mom called them to the dining room. They all took their usual seats, Mom and Dad at the ends, Isabel on one side, Miguel and Jasmine on the other. Mom had made pot roast, Isabel's favorite, which immediately made her suspicious. Something was definitely up. They made small talk while serving the food. Isabel noticed her parents exchanging glances. Finally, after they'd all started eating, Dad cleared his throat. "Kids, your mother and I need to talk to you about something." His voice was serious. Mom reached for his hand. "We're having some financial difficulties," she said. "What kind of difficulties?" Isabel asked, putting down her fork. Dad sighed. "I lost my job last month. Budget cuts. And your mother, the doctor says I need to cut back my hours at the school," Mom added. She'd been an elementary school teacher for 30 years. "My blood pressure's been too high, and standing all day is getting harder." "So what does this mean?" Miguel asked, still chewing. "It means we're having trouble making our mortgage payments," Dad said. "And the utilities, everything really." The table fell silent. Then slowly, everyone's eyes turned to Isabel. She felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what was happening. "We hate to ask," Mom began, her eyes welling up with tears, "but we're family." "I've been helping already," Isabel said cautiously. "I've been giving you guys money for groceries. I paid for the new refrigerator last year, helped with the bathroom renovation." She looked at her siblings. "And I've helped you both with rent when you needed it." Miguel and Jasmine exchanged a glance. "Yeah, but Isabel," Jasmine said, leaning forward, "you make way more than any of us, and these are our parents we're talking about." "You've got that big promotion," Miguel added. "It's not like you need all that money." Isabel sat there stunned. "So you're saying I should take on their mortgage payments while you two do what, exactly?" Dad looked down at his plate. "We're not asking forever, honey, just until I can find another job." "We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate," Mom added. Isabel looked around the table at their expectant faces, her siblings who she'd already bailed out countless times, her parents who she loved despite everything. She knew she should stand her ground, But the words that came out of her mouth were, "Okay, I'll help." The relief on their faces was immediate. The tension in the room dissolved as if she'd waved a magic wand. Mom's eyes lit up, and Dad sat straighter in his chair. "I knew we could count on you, Isabel," Mom said, squeezing her hand across the table. "You've always been our rock." The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. Dad told jokes. Jasmine talked about a celebrity who'd come into her salon, and Miguel bragged about some girl he was seeing. But Isabel barely heard them. She was mentally recalculating her budget, watching her dream of owning a home slip further away. As she drove back to her apartment that night, she set up the recurring mortgage payment in her banking app. Family comes first, she told herself, even when they take you for granted. The weeks following that fateful dinner changed everything. What started as just the mortgage payment quickly snowballed into an avalanche of requests. Her phone became a never-ending stream of financial emergencies from her family. Mom needed money for groceries. Dad's car needed repairs. The water heater broke. The property taxes were due. Each time, Isabel transferred the money without argument. She told herself it was temporary, that things would get better once Dad found a new job. But as weeks turned into months, there was always a new crisis, a new expense. One Tuesday morning in early spring, her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Need $2,000 for cosmetology certification. Job requires it. Can you help?" Isabel stared at the screen, doing quick mental math. She'd already sent her parents $1,200 for the mortgage this month, plus another $450 for utilities. She'd given Miguel $800 last week to fix his car's transmission. Her savings account was dwindling faster than she could replenish it. She sighed and replied, "I'll transfer it today." Jasmine's response was immediate. "You're the best. I'll pay you back someday." They both knew she wouldn't. Isabel opened her banking app and made the transfer, then pulled up her budget spreadsheet. The numbers were bleak. At this rate, her dream of buying a house would remain just that, a dream. The money she'd been saving for years was now serving as her family's personal emergency fund. But family comes first, she reminded herself, even if they don't appreciate it. Her birthday arrived in late April, 37. She hadn't planned anything special, just a quiet evening at home with takeout and wine. She'd invited her family over, not expecting much, but hoping for at least a little celebration. Mom and Dad arrived empty-handed. "Sorry, honey, no gift this year," Mom said as she kissed Isabel's cheek. "You know how things are. We didn't want to give you something cheap." Isabel swallowed her disappointment. "No problem. I'm just glad you're here." Dad patted her shoulder and headed straight for her fridge to grab a beer. Her doorbell rang again 20 minutes later. It was Miguel with a woman Isabel had never seen before. "Happy birthday, sis," he said, handing her a small package wrapped in newspaper. "This is Tiffany." The woman gave Isabel a quick wave. "Nice place." Isabel unwrapped Miguel's gift, a keychain with a plastic cupcake dangling from it. The price tag was still attached, $4.99. "Thanks," she said, forcing a smile. "Do you have any food?" Miguel asked, already heading toward her kitchen. "We're starving." Isabel watched as he filled 2 plates with the pasta she'd ordered, then packed up a third container with leftovers. "We've got to run," he announced after they'd eaten. "Tiffany's friend is having a thing. Can we take this?" He held up the container of food. Before Isabel could answer, they were heading out the door. "Thanks for the food. Later." And they were gone. Isabel's phone pinged with a text from Jasmine. "So sorry, can't make it tonight. Have a date. Happy birthday." Isabel poured herself another glass of wine and sat down with her parents, who spent the next hour complaining about their financial struggles. "The insurance went up again," Dad sighed. "And we need a new washer," Mom added. "Ours is making that terrible noise again." Isabel nodded, letting their hints wash over her without response. She'd given enough this month. When they finally left, Isabel sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and dirty wine glasses. Some birthday. 2 more months dragged by. Isabel's bank account continued to shrink while her resentment grew. Then came the announcement. Mom and Dad were planning their 40th wedding anniversary celebration and wanted to do something special. They needed $5,000 for a venue and catering. Isabel wanted to say no. She should have said no. But when Mom called with that pleading tone in her voice, talking about how they never had a proper celebration for any of their anniversaries, Isabel caved. The day of the anniversary party arrived. The venue was beautiful, an event space downtown with elegant decorations and a catered buffet. Isabel recognized faces from her childhood, aunts, uncles, cousins, her parents' old neighbors, and friends. Everyone was dressed in their finest, champagne glasses clinking as they celebrated her parents' 40 years together. Isabel mingled with relatives she hadn't seen in years, answering the usual questions about her job and love life. No boyfriend. Yes, still at the same company. No kids yet. The conversation always ended with a pitying smile and a "well, there's still time." When the time came for speeches, everyone gathered around her parents. Her father's sister gave a touching tribute to their enduring love. Old friends shared funny stories from their early years together. Then it was time for the children to speak. Miguel went first, giving a rambling speech about what great parents they'd been, how they always supported his dreams. Jasmine followed, tearing up as she talked about their unconditional love and sacrifice. Then it was Isabel's turn. She kept it brief, congratulating them on 40 years and wishing them many more. They smiled politely and thanked her before turning their attention back to her siblings. During their response speech, her parents gushed about how proud they were of their children. They spoke at length about Miguel's entrepreneurial spirit and Jasmine's artistic talent. Isabel got a single mention, and Isabel, always so responsible. Isabel plastered on a smile, ignoring the sting. She had paid for this entire celebration, and she was barely an afterthought. Just as dessert was being served, Isabel's phone rang. It was her boss. She excused herself and stepped outside to take the call. There was an issue with a client presentation that needed immediate attention. After the call, she headed back inside but paused in the hallway outside the main room to check her appearance in a mirror. That's when she heard them, her mother's voice and her Aunt Linda's, coming from around the corner. "I noticed you didn't say much about Isabel in your speech," Aunt Linda said. Isabel froze, her hand still on her compact mirror. Mom laughed softly. "Well, between us, Isabel's just a purse for us now. She always gives money whenever we ask." The words hit Isabel like a physical blow. She pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. If she wasn't helping with the mortgage and everything else, Mom continued, we probably wouldn't even keep in touch. She's always been difficult, not like Miguel and Jasmine. "It must be hard," Aunt Linda said sympathetically, "having to pretend you care about a child you don't love." Isabel stood frozen in the hallway, her mother's words echoing in her head. Isabel's just a purse for us now. Her own mother had just admitted she didn't love her, that she only kept in touch because of her money. Everything Isabel believed about her family was crumbling around her. "Have you and Robert updated your will lately?" Aunt Linda asked, changing the subject. "Done it last year," Mom replied casually. "The house and everything else will be split between Miguel and Jasmine." "Isabel's not included?" Isabel pressed her hand against her mouth to stifle a gasp. Not only did they see her as an ATM, but they'd also deliberately cut her out of their will after she'd been paying their mortgage. The house she was helping them keep would never be partly hers. Isabel heard them moving, heading back to the party. She slipped into the ladies' room to avoid them, locking herself in a stall until she could breathe normally again. Her hands shook as she checked her reflection in the mirror. Somehow she looked the same. How could she look the same when everything had changed? She returned to the party, moving like a ghost through the crowd. No one noticed when she collected her purse and jacket. No one saw her slip out the door. Isabel drove home in a daze, her mind replaying her mother's words on a loop. At home, she poured herself a large glass of wine and opened her banking app. With clinical detachment, she scrolled through months of transactions, adding up everything she'd given her family. The mortgage payments, the utilities, the loans to her siblings that were never repaid, the anniversary party. It was staggering, nearly $30,000 in the past few months alone. And for what? To buy the affection of people who didn't even like her? With a decisive tap, she canceled the scheduled mortgage payment. Then she went to bed, feeling oddly calm. For the first time in months, she slept deeply without waking to check her phone for family emergencies. The next week passed in strange silence. No calls from her parents, no texts from her siblings begging for money. They hadn't even noticed she'd left the party early. They didn't care enough to check if she was okay. It was exactly 7 days after the anniversary when her phone finally rang, her mother's name flashing on the screen. Isabel. Her voice was tight with panic. The bank just called us. They said the mortgage payment didn't go through. Did you forget to send it? No hello, no, how are you? Just straight to the money. I didn't forget, Isabel said calmly. I canceled it. Silence on the line. Then, what do you mean you canceled it? Why would you do that? I'm not paying your mortgage anymore, Mom. I'm not giving any of you money ever again. Have you lost your mind? Her voice rose. What's gotten into you? I heard you at the party, Isabel said, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. I heard what you said to Aunt Linda, that I'm just a purse to you, that you don't even love me. You misunderstood, she stammered. I didn't mean. And I heard about the will, Isabel continued, how you're leaving everything to Miguel and Jasmine, nothing to me, even though I'm the one paying to keep your house. You're overreacting, she said, her tone shifting from panic to condescension. Family helps family. That's what we do. No, that's what I do. Miguel and Jasmine don't help. You and Dad don't help. I'm the only one giving, and I'm done. Isabel hung up and immediately turned off her phone. When she turned it back on hours later, there were dozens of missed calls and messages. Mom, Dad, Miguel, Jasmine, all suddenly very interested in talking to her. Isabel skimmed the texts. They all said essentially the same thing. She was being selfish. She was overreacting. She had money to spare, so why wouldn't she help? They were struggling while she lived comfortably. She owed them. She blocked their numbers. For 3 blessed days, Isabel had peace. Then on Saturday morning, a pounding on her apartment door jolted her awake. She checked through the peephole and saw them all standing there, Mom, Dad, Miguel, and Jasmine. Isabel, we know you're in there. Dad called through the door. Open up. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to any of you, Isabel replied, standing firmly on the other side of the locked door. Please leave. We had to borrow money to make this month's payment, Mom cried, her voice breaking. We could lose the house. My health isn't good, Dad added. Do you want us to be homeless? Why don't Miguel and Jasmine help? Isabel asked. They're getting the house in your will, after all. How can you be so selfish? Jasmine shouted. You're just a bitter old maid with nowhere to spend your money anyway. Her words stung, but they also confirmed everything Isabel already knew. She was nothing to them but a checkbook. Leave now, or I'm calling the police, she said firmly. If you don't leave in the next 60 seconds, I'm dialing 911. She heard muttered curses, then footsteps retreating. From her window, Isabel watched them get into Dad's car and drive away. Isabel thought that would be the end of it, but they weren't done yet. The calls started coming from other relatives, cousins, aunts, uncles, all with the same message. Family is above all. You should help your parents. How could you be so cruel? Isabel stopped answering calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She blocked emails. She set all her social media to private. Slowly, the siege began to lift. Through mutual friends, Isabel heard updates. Miguel and Jasmine had moved back to their parents' house to help with the mortgage. They were all struggling to adjust to their new financial reality. No more expensive boutiques for Jasmine, no more partying for Miguel. They had to rely on themselves now, not on Isabel. Meanwhile, Isabel was rebuilding her savings. Her dream of owning a home was back on track without the constant drain of her family's demands. She was amazed at how quickly her account grew. She started looking at real estate listings again, even scheduled a few viewings. One evening, while browsing houses online, Isabel got a text from an unknown number. "It's Mom. Please call me. We need to talk. We miss you." She blocked the number without replying and returned to scrolling through photos of houses that might someday be hers, houses where she'd never have to open the door to people who saw her as nothing but a means to an end. 3 months passed without contact from her family. Isabel settled into a peaceful routine, focusing on her career and herself for the first time in years. She started therapy, trying to understand why she'd allowed her family to use her for so long. Her therapist helped her see that she'd been buying their love with money, hoping that if she gave them enough, they'd finally value her the way they valued Miguel and Jasmine. But their love had never been for sale because they'd never intended to sell it to her. By month 4, Isabel had made a big decision. She put her apartment on the market, and it sold quickly for a good price. Between the sale proceeds and her revitalized savings, she had enough to make a serious offer on a nice house in a good neighborhood. It had a cozy backyard with mature trees and space for the garden she'd always wanted, not the mansion of her dreams, but something even better. A real home that would be entirely hers, bought with money she'd earned and saved without sacrificing her dignity. The morning after her offer was accepted, Isabel's phone rang with yet another unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Isabel?" It was her father's voice, softer than she'd heard it in years. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want, Dad?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "We're having a really hard time," he said. "Your mother and the bank is threatening foreclosure. Miguel and Jasmine are trying, but they can't cover it all." "I'm sorry to hear that," Isabel said, meaning it despite everything. She didn't want them to suffer. "But I can't help anymore. We made a mistake," he admitted. "Your mother and I have been talking. We've changed our will. The house will be split 3 ways now, equal shares for all our children." And there it was, not an apology, but a bribe. They weren't sorry for how they treated her. They were offering her a share of a house that might be foreclosed on anyway, in exchange for her continued financial support. "That's not why I stopped helping, Dad," Isabel said quietly. "It was never about the will. It was about being taken for granted. It was about Mom saying she doesn't even love me, that I'm just a wallet to all of you." She was upset that day, he protested weakly. "She didn't mean it. She sounded pretty clear to me," Isabel replied. "And none of you have apologized. You're only calling because you need money again." The silence confirmed her suspicion. "I have to go, Dad. I just bought a house, my house. I hope things work out for you all." She hung up and blocked the number. The attempts to contact Isabel continued, growing more desperate as their financial situation worsened. They sent messages through coworkers, neighbors, even had someone slip a note under her door. Each time, the focus was on what they needed, what she could give them, never on how they'd hurt her or how they could make amends. Through mutual friends, Isabel learned they'd had to take out a second mortgage to avoid foreclosure. Miguel had finally gotten a full-time job at a warehouse. Jasmine had given up on cosmetology and was working as a receptionist. Her parents had sold their second car and were cutting expenses wherever they could. Isabel felt a complicated mix of emotions, sadness that they were struggling, satisfaction that they were finally facing reality, guilt that she wasn't helping, relief that she'd broken free from their manipulation. But mostly, she felt proud of herself for standing her ground. 6 months after cutting ties, Isabel moved into her new house. It wasn't enormous, but it was in a nice neighborhood with good sidewalks and friendly neighbors. Every square inch was hers, paid for with money she'd earned and saved without sacrificing her self-respect. She painted the walls her favorite colors, bought furniture she loved, and planted flowers in her cozy backyard, creating the sanctuary she'd always dreamed of having. As she was unpacking in her new home, Isabel's doorbell rang. She opened it to find a delivery person with a large envelope. Inside was a formal invitation to her cousin Emma's wedding, along with a handwritten note. "I know things are difficult with the family right now, but I'd love to have you there. No pressure." Isabel had always been close to Emma. She was one of the few relatives who hadn't taken sides in the family drama. Isabel called her that evening. "Thanks for the invitation," she said. "I'm not sure if I should come. Will my parents be there?" "Of course they will," Emma said honestly. "But this is my day and I want you there. I can seat you far away from them. Will they try to corner me? I can't handle another ambush. I've made it clear to everyone no family drama at my wedding. If anyone tries anything, my fiancé's brothers will escort them out. They're both former football players," she added with a laugh. Isabel considered it. Maybe it was time to reclaim her place in the extended family on her terms. "I'll be there," she decided. The wedding was beautiful. True to her word, Emma seated Isabel at a table with old school friends. From her immediate family, she caught glimpses of them throughout the evening, Mom and Dad looking older and more subdued, Miguel in a suit that seemed a size too large, Jasmine without her usual designer accessories. During the reception, Isabel stepped outside for some air and found herself face to face with her mother. "Isabel," she said, clearly surprised. "You look well." "Thanks," Isabel replied. "You too." An awkward silence stretched between them. "I heard you bought a house," she finally said. "Yes, I sold my apartment and bought a nice place with a backyard. It's perfect for me." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "We're doing better now. Miguel got promoted. Jasmine's going back to school. Something practical this time." "I'm glad," Isabel said, and meant it. "We miss you," she said, her voice small. Isabel looked at her. Really looked at her, and saw not the manipulative mother who'd called her a purse, but an aging woman who'd made terrible choices and was living with the consequences. "I miss who I thought you all were," Isabel admitted. "But I don't miss being used." She flinched but didn't argue. As Isabel turned to go back inside, her mother called after her. "Will you ever forgive us?" Isabel paused, considering her question. "Maybe someday," she said. "But not today." Walking back to the reception, Isabel felt lighter somehow. She didn't need their approval anymore. She didn't need to buy their love. She was building her own life on her own terms, and that was something worth celebrating. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.